So after more than 2 years of testing and evaluation, the Army finally chose which company is going to build its next generation squad weapon, which is the replacement for the M4 and for the squad automatic weapon, or M249. But actually, you have to rewind a little bit. This project starts essentially in 2017 with a small arms ammunition configuration study. That study really went after challenges that operational forces faced and found out in the field in Afghanistan and other combat scenarios. They were finding limited ranges with the 5.56 round in the M4 and the squad automatic weapon, and they were also having problems with penetration of body armor, especially advanced body armor that was being taken on by adversaries. So what the Army did was take that study, which identified an intermediate caliber, or 6mm. That was later refined to a 6.8mm, which, if you're a hunter, you could think of something like a 270 round, a 270 round in more of a larger case, though, with more powder behind it to give it more velocity and lethality. That's essentially what they're working with now. So the prototypes came pretty quickly. One from Textron Systems, one from General Dynamics OTS and Lone Star partnership, and also Sig Sauer, which won the contract for a little more than $4 billion over the next 10 years. Those different prototypes are interesting. The Textron Systems had a cased telescope ammunition, essentially a polymer cartridge, with the bullet inside of the cartridge rather than outside to save space and also save weight. The future systems from Lone Star looked at a bullpup design, which is common and has been around for decades, but is not very common in American shooting circles and not with American military. Those two companies did not win the contract, of course. Now, Sig Sauer also won the contract to replace not just the Army, but the Army, Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps' sidearm or handgun back in 2017. That's the 9mm weapon that actually replaced the Beretta M9, which had been in service since the 1980s. So with this program with the next generation squad weapon, soldiers, Marines, Special Operations all tested this weapon. They gave their feedback on all three prototypes, and then the Army, of course, selected the 6-hour version. Now in January, before the weapon was actually announced, the Army selected the fire controller optic for about a $2.7 billion contract that was going to essentially field these optics with all of the weapons moving forward for the next 10 years. The two items together basically create a whole new way of shooting. The fire control optic has built-in invisible and visible laser rangefinders, aiming lasers, a suite of sensors for atmospheric conditions, ballistic computers and calculators. The fire control can actually be mounted on any weapon within the arsenal, on machine guns, on the existing M4 platform, and of course on the next generation squad weapon, which was built specifically for. Of course, the weapon, the rifle version of the next generation squad weapon will replace the M4 and M16 for the close combat forces. The automatic rifle version, or M250, will replace the M249 SAW squad automatic weapon. Now both the M16 M4 and the SAW were firing the 5.56. Both of the variants for the next generation squad weapon will fire the 6.8mm. Again, I said it was for the close combat forces. That's essentially infantry, scouts, combat medics, combat engineers, and of course special operations forces, and potentially some Marine units. Now the Marines have not decided officially to adopt the program and bring those rifles into fielding. However, the contract allows for enough rifles to be produced for all of the services if they need it. Right now the Army plans to have about 120,000 over the next 10 years. Those quantities may change and the delivery dates may change depending on budgets from Congress, but they're going to field that out to every one of the close combat forces within the Army. However, the contract over that decade does allow for the building and manufacturing of up to 250,000 weapons, which would fill all the needs of the Marine Corps' close combat forces, special operations or SOCOM, and even foreign partners should they decide to buy the weapon. Now the first batch of these weapons are supposed to hit the first unit equipped, which has not yet been identified, by fall of 2023. Now don't get excited yet, soldiers. That's not going to hit every soldier in the Army immediately, and not even large-scale units. It could take many years, even up to potentially a decade, to fully field out all these weapons, to build them, put them out and get them through testing and fielding to the different units across the Army for the full 120,000 complement that would actually serve the entire close combat force. In the meantime, the Army has to create a whole new ammunition line. Essentially, Sig Sauer, the company that won the competition, which was built really around an Army-produced, government-produced projectile, the 6.8mm projectile, is going to have to work with the Army to adjust, pressures, ballistics, different kinds of ratios on that round to get it really right there in the sweet spot of target accuracy and lethality. And to do that, Sig Sauer is basically devoting an entire production line to producing that round for the next 2 to 3 years. And then while they're doing that, the Army and the DoD, the Pentagon, are funding a whole new line, a whole new building for ammunition production just for 6.8mm at its Lake City ammunition plant. That's the plant that produces pretty much all of the small arms ammunition across the Army and for most of the services that fire small arms. So those two kind of parallel projects are going to be going on, building the weapon, building enough rounds to produce what's called a war stock, or enough to go to war with, as well as enough to train with for those first few batches of weapons, and also building out a production line that can keep pumping out as many rounds as needed in the millions, hundreds of millions really, over the coming years. So there's a huge stockpile of ammunition for the close combat force to fight with should it come to that. This is Todd South with Military Times.